This is The Ultimate Mind with Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. Are you ready to unlock the full potential of your health, your wealth, and your relationships? Welcome to The Ultimate Mind, where we dive deep into the world of biohacking, metabolic health, functional well-being, and the money mindset. Each week, you're going to be hearing from enlightened conversations with thought leaders that'll give you the insights, the strategies to help you reshape your life, achieve your dreams, and of course, unlock the ultimate potential of your mind. Connect with us on the social in the links below. Welcome back to the Ultimate Mind podcast. I am Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. Thank you guys for joining me. You guys are going to be super excited about today's guest. I'm not lying when I say this. When I say that I've got one of the greats who's training the greats, that's what I've got today. Mike Lee is a leader in this world. He's a keynote speaker, internationally sold author, and coaches who shares high performance leadership lessons from the inside of the hearts and minds of the NBA's elite. For 15 years, he spent time with basketball's number 1%, including NBA MVPs Steph Curry and Joel Embiid. While leading his basketball training business, he was blindsided by a period of personal and professional adversity and dove deep into the practices of mindfulness and meditation. Today, Mike's blended these diverse backgrounds to create a counterculture approach to the future of leadership, which has earned him rave reviews from Fortune 500 companies and professional associations. Mike, thank you for being here, my man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive in with you.
Let's talk about this. So you go from basketball training, you get into some challenges, and what's the first thing you learn? And what do you do? How do you start? Let's just start kind of there.
Yeah. So built a business out of my college apartment, went from one summer basketball camp that I was running with a buddy of mine to a training facility in Milwaukee to eventually running events, quite honestly, across the world with middle school through NBA players and coaches. And business was going pretty well, but I had always dealt with depression really bad my entire life. I know you're out in Illinois. So in the winters, I used to get incredibly depressed growing up in Wisconsin. And so it got to a point where I just decided I could not take another winter anymore. And I picked up and I moved out to LA in November 2014. I was out there for a couple of months and it got to be January and it was sunny out and I was feeling way better than I'd ever felt before in the winter. And I decided to get off an antidepressant medication that I'd been on that point for about 14 years. And getting off of it was quite literally what board certified doctors at UCLA have compared to getting off of heroin. I went from laughing to crying to chronic anxiety to debilitating depression all within a span of a couple of hours. And so, as you can imagine, it was incredibly difficult to focus on, both my personal and my professional life. But speaking professionally, I couldn't get into the present moment, as you can imagine, being in that emotional state, being on that emotional roller coaster. And so at the time, I'd been practicing yoga for about a year. And I decided to commit to a daily mindfulness meditation practice. And after a few months of consistent practice, I realized why CEOs like Steve Jobs, elite athletes like Kobe Bryant, why luminaries like Oprah all had attributed some form of a meditation practice to their level of success. And at that point, I realized there's probably going to be a different path in my life. And instead of building basketball players, it was going to be building leaders and building people.
I think it's amazing. So you decide you go down this mindful practice and you start meditating. And how long did it take for you to actually start seeing the changes in yourself, in your life, and then saying, you know what, I want to take this into the world, into the corporate world, into athletes?
That's a great question, because I think it's interesting as you go through your own journey. My experience is that it's the people outside of you that see the changes first.
Sure.
Right. Like I see the shifts in the people that are closest to me before they even see it for themselves. And so I guess like one inflection point where I was probably a few months into my meditation practice, sitting on my rooftop in the morning, downtown Santa Monica. And I just had this experience, this deep and profound sense of inner peace that I've never had before. It was completely foreign to me. And I think it was in that moment that I solidified my belief that experience trumps knowledge any day of the week. Right. I think And there's you would know more than me, but a lot of science behind that, right? The emotions that we experience during a learning experience are what stick with us, right? And so that was probably one big inflection point. There was several over the course of several years that kind of led me to this, but that was
No, that's
one.
great. I love that. I think it's amazing. And so you start getting into the world of leadership and corporate leadership, and you start working with basketball players, and you work with greats like Joel Embiid and Steph Curry. How do you break into the NBA to do this work? That's an interesting question. Like thought, like how does someone break in at that level to go work with these greats?
Yeah, so both of those guys I worked with when I was in the basketball world they have not been a part of my more leadership mindset corporate experience, right? But I don't want to say that they just happened by chance or by luck, but they were things that came to me. I didn't chase them. I was a director at Steph Curry's first skills academy that he ran for some of the top high school and college basketball players in the country. That's how I got to know him and worked with him in that capacity. And Joel Embiid, I actually worked with when he was 16 years old, had only been in the United States for a few months. Nobody knew who he was. I ended up working with him because a mentor of mine was a coach for the Milwaukee Bucks, and a player by the name of Luc Bamunte was playing for the Milwaukee Bucks, and he was bringing Joel and his younger brother Roger over from Cameroon to Milwaukee to spend the summer with them. He was just looking for somebody to work them out in the summer. And my mentor, Bill Peterson, had recommended me to work with the guys. But I think, like at a practical level, like it's be as great as you possibly can at what you do, and people will talk about you.
To that,
it's like focus on mastering your craft, and you will get the opportunities that you want. I mean, I think there's a balance. You have to like be somewhat good at relationships and connecting with people in sales and marketing and that aspect of running your business. Otherwise, nobody's going to know who you are. But but those opportunities really just came. They came from the relationships and demonstrating a body of work.
beautiful, beautiful. It's about the people. Jay Abraham was a mentor of mine and a friend, a colleague. Also, he has it's the saying that he says that your net worth is directly proportionate to your net worth. Right? They're completely connected. So I agree with that. So now the work that you're doing, like I had a chance to look into it a little bit, and you talk a lot about the present moment and getting into the present moment for performance. Can you talk more about what your process and how you help people get to that space in the corporate space and the athlete space? How do you take people to get into that space of performance?
I'd answer it in a couple of ways. I think I would first, talk about we're living in a world of constant distraction, partial attention, and overwhelming change. Yeah. And some of the research shows that we're actually only present about 50% of the day. We dwell on the past, we drift to the future, or we get pulled out of the present by the constant distractions that are present in our lives, no pun intended. And so it's crucial that we place our attention and our energy into the present moment. Everything, let's just talk about performance or look at it from the performance standpoint, because I know it's a lot of your listeners, right? Yeah. I'm sure everybody that's listening to this episode right now wishes they could get into flow more. They could tap into the zone. They could be more in that deep state of being focused, right? Well, where does that exist? It exists in the present moment. It's the only place that it exists, right? When time and space disappear. And so people kind of ask, like, well, why is the present moment so important? People think that they are present most of the time. And the truth is really not. Like I struggle with it, even with all the practices that I implement. But one of the avenues is through mindfulness. And the way we define mindfulness is it's a skill. It's just like an athlete has a great move or an ability to shoot from the 3-point line or not. I don't follow a ton of other sports. I was trying to think of another analogy. But it's a skill. It's the ability to create the awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions in the present moment. And I think the awareness piece is key, because in high performance, we talk a lot about sustained focus. But what we don't talk about is operating with a level of sustained awareness. Because if we're not aware that we've been pulled out of the present moment, we can't redirect our attention and energy back to the task at hand, the conversation that we're having, the phone call, the email, the task that's right in front of us, whatever it is, the project that or piece that we're creating, right? That has to happen in the present moment, right? So the awareness is crucial to be able to direct our attention and energy where it's going to be most powerful.
I love that, because we don't talk about sustained awareness, right? And to make sure that we stay there. So what do you think is I mean, obviously there's lots of distractions. I mean, TikTok, Instagram, like all the stuff that's out there. Right? We know that. Like, so do you find that it's meditation alone? Like because here's the question I get all the time. Sure, I've created in the Rewire world, I've created processes to sit and say, okay, you can get your back to a state of presence through asking right questions and quality questions, and rewires your brain back to it. But how does someone do that when they get rattled? Like they're on the basketball floor and they've got to be competitive, or in the business world, they're trying to be competitive. How do you stay competitive yet present?
I actually look at it as you can only be competitive if you are in the present moment.
Tell me
Right.
more. I don't follow it. Tell me more.
If I'm going to compete, it means I have to do the work that's right in front of me, right? I have to guard the player that's right in front of me. I have to focus on the one shot that I'm taking in this moment. If I'm running a board meeting or I'm, in a leadership position and I'm speaking to my people, like they can feel my presence. They can feel whether or not I'm connected to them in the moment. And that only happens when we are in the present moment. And so I think in order to compete, we have to be in the present moment. Because, lots of like Coach K has a saying called, well, Pad, when he was coaching, he came up called next play. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. So Coach K is a legendary coach at Duke University, just retired last year, a couple years ago. And he had a phrase called next play. And he came up with this because he would see players dwell on the past after they made a mistake, right? They would turn the basketball over. They would miss a shot. They wouldn't get back on defense, and their attention and energy would be in the past on the mistake that they made, right? And so his coaching phrase that he came up with was next play, like just get to the next play, whatever that next play is, so they could focus on what was right in front of them, right? So if you're in a sales position, right, and you have a 10 a.m. meeting, and it's a client that you've been working on for months, maybe years, right? And for whatever reason, that client decides to go in a different direction, and you lose the call, or you lose the deal, right? You have another meeting coming up at 11 a.m. with a new client, right? You can't bring the energy of the past into the present moment. Otherwise, you won't fully be there, right? And people can feel that when you're with them, no matter what the context is, whether that's having a conversation with your partner, your spouse, your wife, your kids, somebody that you're leading, a client, whatever it is, people can feel that.
I think that's so true in what you're saying, right? It's like you've got to be in that present moment to be able to navigate the situation effectively for your decision making, for management of your decision. I guess, how do people deal with it in your world? Like, how do you teach it if someone is, maybe that's a bigger problem, right? Maybe that's not a situational problem, but maybe it's something like they're trying to go after something, or there's something that's, I don't know, the company's under distraught, and it's something that's a bigger thing. Do you break it down and compartmentalize it one by one? Is that kind of something that you feel is the best option inside that?
I think that can definitely be a strategy if somebody has the mental capacity to do that. No question about it. I think the way I look at it is like, and I think this is the question that you're answering, or that you're asking. Hopefully I'm answering it right. But like, if I'm going after something bigger, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say I'm going after something bigger, a huge goal, whatever it is. Sure. We're trying to get our business to 10 million or 50 or 100 or whatever it is, right? Is that an example?
Sure, you can use that as an example. That's fine.
Or we're trying to get a new product to market, or we are working on some social initiative within our organization, some social cause that we're adding to our business, right?
Take a $10 million goal as an example, right? Like that's just a number, that's an external number outside of you. How do you stay present internally to get to an external goal? That's sure, that's a fair question.
Yeah. So I think it comes down to like that, the 10 million, getting to 10 million or 50 million, 100, any of these things, that external things, the truth is like, they're completely outside of your control, right? Sure. completely outside of your control. The only thing that you can focus on is the process to bring that to life.
Yeah.
And so I think when we have a vision, the power of having that vision or having that bigger goal is that then we can reverse engineer the process in order to bring that to life. And that's when we have to do A, B, C, D to bring that vision to life. And those things that we have to do, the tasks that we have to complete, whatever we have to do in your space, those things all happen in the present moment. We look at the big things and forget that it's the million little things that add up over time that actually create those.
So true.
And it's an example, a super simple example is just the decisions, right? It's like, it sounds super cliche, but it's like the decisions that we make on a moment to moment basis are what add up and create our future.
100%.
No matter what that is, life or business, right? Well, where do the decisions exist? They exist in the present moment.
If I can synopsize what you just said, just for the listeners, just to be able, because it was so good. It was so good, Mike. I just want people to catch in the phrase. Like, the external goal is out of your control. Whatever it is, whatever number you marker you put, it's out of your control. But what you do have control is the process of now. And everything that is in the process always exists in the now.
Yeah.
Every process exists in now because it's this now that you're focusing on the process inside of it.
Yeah, no question.
I love that. I love that. So, Mike, you're doing all this work with corporations, IBM, Morgan Stanley, and all these major Fortune 500 companies and what you're doing. I guess, where do you see the dynamics of business and where are people struggling, both personally and professionally, to stay in that present? Obviously, stress is there, distractions are there, but where are they doing this? Because as a doctor and someone, I'll call you as a health expert in this capacity as well, right? As a mindfulness expert in that, where are they breaking down and what's causing their illnesses?
One of the big things is everybody's being asked to do more with less time, money, resources, energy, right? I think that's a big thing. And I think, being able to be in this, and this is maybe not something they're struggling with, but a solution to it at a high level, right? Is to be in this state of non-resistance and non-judgment, being able to just be in a state of full acceptance of what is in the moment, right? I think a lot of people won't like the answer to this, but the truth is that stress doesn't happen we don't experience stress because of what happens. We experience stress because our resistance to what happens. Right. And if we can just be in full acceptance of what is, it doesn't mean that I'm being complacent. It doesn't mean that I'm playing the victim role. It just means that I'm from an objective standpoint, I'm accepting what is in the moment. And it's from that place that we can actually make better decisions that will be more thoughtful, more aware, and more mindful with all of the stakeholders in mind.
I couldn't agree with you more, right? It's resistance. I've said for many years, Mike, that, stress is the inability to adapt to a changing environment. And if you can't adapt to that changing environment, you now create the resistance, as you're calling it, into stress inside that. And so you've got this book out right now, right? What's the name of the book?
New Rules for the Future of Leadership.
What's that book about? Tell us a little bit more about this, about leadership and the new rules inside of it.
Yeah. So the book is, in the past, some of the rules were nice to have, and now I think they're rules. Right. Yeah. And so the book really stemmed from a run that I went on during early June 2020. And I just kind of had some realizations about the changing world. Obviously, one was that the world will never be the same, which, was not my own, was not a realization of my own. A lot of people knew that. But, the world will never be the same. Leaders have never faced more things simultaneously, right? Like all the things that were happening, virtual work environment, social justice movement, the pandemic, the uncertainty, the recession that everybody thought was coming. Like leaders had never had to face more things at once. The third thing is it kind of is this leadership paradigm where KPIs and maximizing shareholder profits, driving all decision making it's going to die. Right. And I think people reflected on their purpose in life. They reflected on what they wanted their life to mean. And I think a lot of people were really looking at, when all the perks were stripped away and when the only thing that was really left was the work, there was no water cooler conversations and golf outings and all this stuff. Like people really started to ask, like, how do I want to spend my 8 hours a day? Right. Or more for a lot of people. Right. And so one of the pillars in the book is being purpose driven at an individual level and at an organizational level. The second pillar is around being future focused, and that's creating a compelling purpose driven vision and pursuing that with a sense of optimism. I think there's a lot of negative connotations with Gen Z and millennials. And I actually think one of the things that I love about them is that they, speaking as an older millennial, but they want their lives to be driven by meaning and purpose. And like work is a place that we find that. So why not, organizations that can fulfill that need are going to set themselves up to win. Third thing is leading with mindfulness, which we got into a little bit here. I think nobody wants to work for a leader that can't manage their mental and emotional state. And as mindfulness, the self-awareness created through mindfulness is the foundation for emotional intelligence. And the more technology disruptions, change that we have to deal with, the more mindful and emotionally intelligent leaders will be at a premium. And the last thing is leading with the heart, right? We all want a place where we feel seen, heard, valued, where we feel like we belong, where we feel a sense of connection. And those are all innate human things. But if your place of work can provide them, right, you can create an experience for your people that goes beyond what happens at work, right? It impacts their entire life when they have a place where they feel valued, seen, heard, and they feel like they belong.
I think that's so important for cultural dynamics, whether it be a small company or major corporations. Everyone wants to be heard and felt and belong into a greater mission. I think that's a human dynamic. It's something that we definitely teach very actively in understanding that mission and being able to change the brain so that you can create that mission. I think it's super valuable inside that. Mike, I love the work you're doing. I love what you're bringing to the table for the corporate world, for all the people that you're helping, because I think, and I'll say this for the corporate dynamic, my observation, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, is that underneath the corporate realm, we hide under that guise quite a bit. We hide under the money, we hide under but we don't really understand and we protect ourselves. It's a very protection culture, in my opinion, versus really allowing ourselves to be open and vulnerable so that we can get into that oneness, so that we can get into that open state of really being present in that state. And I actually love that inside it. Do you agree or disagree with what I'm saying inside that?
I totally agree. And I think the leaders who don't embrace that, they're not going to be around. Like they're going to lose. First of all, if they don't learn how to do that for themselves, they're going to burn out and they're going to lose themselves. They don't learn how to do that for their people, they're going to lose their people. People are going to leave. And if they don't do that, if they don't do that with their, the products and services they provide, like they're going to lose their clients and customers and stakeholders. Right. And I think it's going to be something that leaders can do to infuse into everything that they do. I completely agree. I think one thing that's interesting, one observation that I've had that's very interesting is that when I first got in the speaking world a few years ago, I had a demo video, a speaker reel, and I sent it out to all these bureaus, agents who would book talks. And in the video, I had something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it had something to do with the word love in it. Mm-hmm. And I remember an agent getting back to me and they said, "Did you just say the word love at the end of your video?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "You can leave it if you want to, but I'd highly advise you to remove this from your video because I've seen so many people's careers killed by talking about love in the corporate space."
Right.
And I kind of took a step back and honestly, I was like, God, like if I can't talk about stuff like this, I don't even want to do this. And there's been a shift, big time shift, I think, with maybe not necessarily implementation yet, but awareness. But the thing that I think is interesting is that, I studied and spent time with the best coaches in the world that were able to get the maximize the potential of the players that they had at a very, very, very high level. Yeah. And I would say that the number one thing, if you ask the players and the coaches, like, why was Coach, Smith or Krzyzewski or whoever able to get the most out of you? And the number one answer is that I knew that he loved me.
Yeah.
I knew that he would do anything for me, right? And I think like when we get out of the conditioning of the corporate world and business school, we find that if you really honestly reflect on it, you look at it in your own life, you'll see that the most transformative relationships that you've ever had in your life are built upon a foundation of love, of vulnerability, of connection, right? And so I think there's a shift happening, and I'm excited about it. And
I
for
love
people
what you're saying there.
are doing that.
One of my old friends, mentors, is a guy named Steve Farber. He's written 3 books: Radical Experience, Radical Leadership. Excuse me. But he talked about love, and everything was about love. And he'd talk, and he'd do his corporate presentations, and he'd go up. And I loved what he used to say. He said, "I know I'm not supposed to use the word love. I'm not supposed to use the word love, but let me ask you a question. Where is love not in corporate America?" And you can use this if you want. You can give Steve tutelage for it. He said, "Where's love not in corporate America?" He said, "If you don't love your product, then why are you in business? If you don't want your customers to love your product, then what are you selling them? If you don't want to love your career, then why are you doing it?" He said, "See, the thing is, we chastise this word love, but love is literally in every aspect of the corporate culture. We just don't call it that." And I think that was so true in that. And you're kind of reiterating some of the same sentiment in that. I love to hear that because I think it's more and more needed inside the world. Mike, where can people get a hold of you? Where can they get a copy of your book? Where can they learn more about what the work you do?
Yeah, best place to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram is at Who Is Mike Lee. You can grab the book on Amazon. It's out November 21st. And our website is mindshiftlabs.com.
So good. Such an honor and pleasure to meet you, connect with you, and for you to share your wisdom to our audience. I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I have to ask this final question on behalf of my son. How does Steph Curry get into the present before a game?
So I'll give probably a countercultural answer. And I don't know the specifics of his pregame routine and things that he does, but I think I think one of the reasons that Steph is able to play with more freedom, joy, creativity, and gratitude than any player I've ever seen in any sport my entire life is that he holds a belief that I'm more than an athlete. And what this does is like it frees him up to play with less pressure, with less stress. If I'm performing in any arena and I place my identity on the line every single time I step into that arena, that creates a ton of psychological stress that, like, as you know, right, we need a certain amount of stress in order to perform at a high level. But there can also be an overwhelming amount of stress that causes us to be crippled. And I think when we can find that balance, right, is when we get into that flow state. But it is this belief that I'm more than an athlete, right? I'm more than a basketball player. And that allows him to just drop into flow, drop into the present moment, and be at his best.
So good. I love that. Love. I did not think that was going to be the answer that you said. So I'm really glad that you said that. Really glad that you said that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Lee, thank you so much for being here, Mike. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's great to chat with you.
Thank you. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this was Mike Lee. If you check him out on Amazon, mindshiftlabs.com. Amazing work that he's doing, helping leaders, corporate America, and people just excel their lives to the next level. If you're looking to excel your life to the next level, download the UltiMind app. The UltiMind app is designed to help you rewire your brain and get into the present moment. It's designed to use your voice to help you to get your emotions, and using that emotion to help you rewire your brain to get into the present moment so that you can perform at your next best level. I hope to see you on the next episode, next show at the perfect right time. I'm Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. See you next time. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Ultimate Mind Podcast. Your support means the world to me. If you found value in this conversation, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe where you're listening. Hearing from you fuels my mission to help you unlock your ultimate potential. If you're ready for even more, my book, Wired for Wealth, can help you get there. You can purchase it at the links below.